What is balanced literacy? With all of the differing opinions, extreme amount of vocabulary, and multiple models out there, this question can not only be hard, but rather frustrating to answer. I like to think about balanced literacy in its simplest terms: reading and writing to, with, and by students. Balancing these things is the groundwork of building a solid literacy foundation for our students. So if we take the simple view and think of how the vocabulary fits, it could look like this. Reading and writing to our students is what we call modeled reading and modeled writing. Shared reading and writing is when we are practicing with our students as they apply what they saw modeled, but we provide support when needed. Independent is when we want them to take what we've been modeling to them and applied with them so it can be done by them when they're on their own. Now, if we think about other vocab that fits inside this main diagram, it doesn't seem so complex as before. For example, read alouds are just when I'm showing my students what it looks and sounds like to be a reader, which is a type of modeled reading. Guided reading is when I'm guiding a small group through the reading, sharing the process with them to provide support along the way. This is just another form of shared reading. Interactive writing is still sharing the writing process with students, but in this form, we just share the pen as well as the thinking and conversation. One big piece of balanced literacy that can get really confusing is word study. This part of literacy can be tricky to place on a diagram because it fits in so many places depending on what and how you're teaching and having kids participate. Let's think about it like this. If I am modeling a decoding skill, such as breaking words apart by sounds and blending them to say the word, that's a form of modeled reading. Then, if I want kids to try to apply this skill while I guide and support them, that's a form of shared reading. The same applies for independent word study. Once they are ready to practice word study skills on their own, this could be done outside of a full lesson. Word study could also be a focus for writing, such as spelling. Again, this is something you can model, share, or have kids do independently. And then once they're ready to practice on their own, this could be done at a different time with just the independent piece. So word study actually covers a lot of skills we teach, practice, and apply in a literacy classroom. Some are encoding skills that help our students read. Others are decoding skills that help our students write. This diagram gives examples of different skills we cover that are considered word study. Let's go back to the simple view of balanced literacy. Now that we've covered some of the highly used vocabulary, I think it's helpful to think of our classroom instruction in two ways. When we teach one skill or focus lesson through the modeled, then shared, and finally independent phases, this is called workshop model. The reading or writing is done to, with, and by our students, in that order, creating a full workshop lesson. Although I've given you an overview of what workshop model is, that is not what we will focus on for this course. This training will be all about literacy routines and practices outside of the workshop model in our classroom. These literacy routines are things we make time for on a daily or weekly basis to promote literacy. So here's back to our full to, with, and by view diagram of the workshop model when this is done all together. And we're focusing on those literacy routines again. Some of these literacy routines are modeling for students, such as read alouds. Some routines are shared practices, like guided reading or interactive writing. Still others can be independent practice time, such as student choice writing or self-selected reading. Another crucial piece of the balanced literacy puzzle that we cannot dismiss is listening and speaking. Just as reading and writing to, with, and by our students is embedded in our classrooms, so should listening and speaking. And that should be embedded as well. This first section will talk more about embedding listening and speaking, and you'll gain a deeper understanding of how important that is in our classrooms. No matter where they fit on this diagram, the important thing is to make sure we plan time in our day to fit this extremely important type of instruction and practice time into our schedule. Sometimes we plan so many full workshop lessons that we forget how important the literacy routines are in building a solid foundation for our students. That is why day one of Balanced Literacy Bootcamp is all about literacy routines.